Up! We just saw you, I think, less than 12 hours ago, but we're going to go after it once again. Trust fund babies out there. So hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it. Yes! What is up, everybody? And welcome to Mike Chabala's favorite podcast in soccer we trust. I'm Jimmy Cream Cheese, Conrad, Conrad, also known as Jim, alongside Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies and Heartbreak Kid, Hollywood Heath Pearce. We've got a great show for you today. Not only are we going to get Chuck's thoughts about the game, U.S. versus Canada, barely eking it by thanks to the heroics of Matt Turner in penalties to get to the semifinal against Panama. We're going to preview that Panama game. We got some transfer news and stuff we didn't get to last night. But welcome, Chuck. You look great, as always. How are you doing, my friend? And just jump right in and give us your thoughts. We want your raw emotion about last night's results.
Well, I'm happy that the U.S. progressed to the semifinals. It was a game where John Herdman had, I think, put the perfect tactics to disrupt the way the U.S. played, make it uncomfortable, clog up the midfield. Georgi Mihailovic, I think, struggled to get involved in the game. Gianluca Busio really didn't have a strong game until a couple of moments towards the end of the match. So in terms of what Canada were able to do, they just frustrated the U.S. men's national team from playing the game. The passing, it was pretty ugly throughout this match. But in the end, they did what they needed to do to get the job done. The man of the match was Matt Turner, of course. And I'd say just underneath Matt Turner, DeJuan Jones, his stock continues to rise as the left back position. I know Heath was really high on John Tolkien, but I think you'd have to admit that DeJuan Jones has really separated himself from John Tolkien in terms of left back options in this pool.
So just quickly on DeJuan Jones, I had said last night that I thought he played a little bit too safe, and I thought he kept playing backwards. And I thought it's going to come with time, right? Whoever's playing in front of him, which is going to be a rotating person at this point. Sometimes it's Cade Cowell, sometimes it's Zendejas.
Who did you want him to play to? Zendejas?
Well, dude, tap the brakes. I'm with you on it. I think that DeJuan Jones.
You had Zendejas in your starting lineup.
Yeah, you did, Chuck. I was reluctant to put him in my starting lineup, but I would say
who had him in the
you did.
Lineup?
You did.
I didn't have him in the starting lineup for this game.
Yeah, you did. You said except on the other side of the field. Yeah, you did. You said except on the other side of the field.
You did say Zendejas.
You said put him on the right side.
I said if you're going to give him an opportunity.
Oh, sorry, on the left side. Yeah.
On the left, which they did, and he was not good. I also said Cade Cowell should start.
No, you said put him on the left.
Yes,
let him cut in on his right. You did. Anyway,
I did.
Listen. I'll finish my DeJuan Jones. Listen,
what does that have to do with anything?
Well, because you going at Zendejas, like who is he going to play to? Zendejas?
Yeah, exactly. And that's my point.
We're talking in circles right now. All right. Wait, there's one thing too. Producer Alex and producer Des have this in the rundown. We got to get to it here. Where you actually had a chance to talk to Matt Turner, and apparently he couldn't handle your sauce. So we got to take a look at this video. Let's roll this clip, please. Hopefully, producer Alex has it ready. I don't think he's got it ready.
Not yet.
Well, you know what? Just roll it whenever you're ready.
No, producer Alex, you got it.
All right, we'll see. But were there any other standouts for you, Chuck, while he's getting this prepared, and then we'll throw to it? Outside of Matt Turner, outside of DeJuan Jones, did you see any other glimpses that you were enough to go, hey, we got to give him another run out? Because for me, I said it yesterday, Zendejas, I've seen enough, and I want to see Cade Cowell or somebody else get those minutes instead.
No, if I'm going to be honest, the only players that I felt had a good game were Matt Turner and DeJuan Jones. And Jesus Ferreira in this game, I think, did a good job of checking back because the midfield was non-existent for the U.S. men's national team in this game. So he checked back when it made sense, but he also stayed high. I thought he did a good job of balancing the two. He had some good touches. His hold-up play is not strong when he has his back to goal and he's trying to back down a center back. That hasn't been his game. Now he can improve in that area, but it hasn't been his game. So he did a good job of checking off the center back, like bumping him and creating that room of separation. Maybe it was a step or two away from the center back. That's where he could excel. And I thought he did a pretty good job of playing off of Steven Vittoria because Vittoria is not good when he has to come off his back line and try and defend 1v1. That's not his game. But if you have your back to him and he can hold you, that's when, or playing in the air, he's going to win those duels. And I thought Ferreira did a pretty good job of balancing when to check, when to bounce off and find space. But there were no options in the midfield because Canada absolutely outplayed the U.S. men's national team midfield in this game.
Okay, so before we take a step further, and I think the natural evolution of this conversation is, well, what is our starting lineup against Panama? But I do want to get to this Matt Turner video that Chuck is a part of. So let's take a listen or watch.
Very beginning, as a rookie, I remember taking a lot of pens on you. And you were going the wrong way. You weren't able to save my hot sauce. Now, I don't know if I'm scoring on you. What's been the big difference for you? Where did you develop this timing? And also, it seems like you're into the striker's head. You're making him second guess himself before he even takes the shot.
Yeah, I'd say just lots of practice of times like that, learning guys' tendencies, practicing timing, timing is so important in goalkeeping.
All right. So Chuck, you were banging on goals and Matt Turner. That was like your flex of the day. Nice shirt, by the way. You're wearing the same shirt. Nice job.
It's not a flex. What I think it's more important, his work ethic and his commitment, because his rookie year was my last year at the Revs. And I was coming back from cancer. I was coming back from my kids being born early in the hospital. So mentally and physically, I wasn't there. But he was willing to train every single day because I was trying to do all this extra to try and get back.
It sounds like he was letting you score then, Chuck, like taking it all into account. It sounds like maybe that was character building.
He was staying an hour after practice when no one else would to give his time because, one, he knew he was helping me, but he's also helping himself. So when I talk about guys who are just, all about the team and all about a good work ethic, he stands out in front of a million people just because of his humility and just to see his growth. He's a world-class shot stopper, penalty stop when it comes to penalty kicks. He's world-class. And Kevin Hitchcock, he alluded to that, the goalkeeper coach for the Revolution, who developed him, but also is developing George Petrovic, so two top goalkeepers who are going to be playing in Europe. And then Brad Friedel is the one who kind of gave Matt Turner his opportunity. And we all know how good Brad Friedel was as a penalty kick stopper. So it's just good to see Matt Turner and how he's able to continue to develop.
Okay, let's leave the kind of on the field development of Matt Turner aside for right now. Obviously, it's all on display for us to see, especially in penalties. But what I want to talk about is intangibles, because I feel like he's really evolving as a leader. And I think not only will that be important for the national team, but also for his club situation, assuming he can find a way to become the number one, either at Arsenal or somewhere else. Talk to us about what you've seen from that standpoint, because it's not easy, right? Goalkeepers take a little bit longer to develop, but you're the last line of defense. You get to see the whole field, and you're not always tethered to the game. Sometimes you're watching your team have, 75% possession or whatever it may be. But it seems like in this particular tournament, he's taken big steps in becoming a leader. He had told BJ Callahan he wanted to play in both tournaments. He wanted to be the guy that they relied on and took on that responsibility. And I think it's showing. Obviously, he single-handedly, I think, led us into this situation where we're in the semifinal. How important do you think that is? Because not only am I judging him with regard to leadership, Chuck, I thought Miles Robinson, I was a little let down from him in that aspect last night. We needed him to be the guy. Jalen Neal's the younger guy next to him. I think Miles is usually the younger guy next to somebody else. And we needed him to have that type of presence. And I think he lacked that a little bit last night, which is part of my disappointment in his performance. So you have guys like Matt Turner that are going to step up. And I think we lacked some leaders last night. We did enough to get the result. But let's talk about the leadership aspect, because that could be absolutely massive moving forward for this national team.
Well, Matt Turner, we all are leaders in our own way in a lot of cases. And for Matt Turner, the only way he was going to lead is by leading by example in the initial stages, because you have to prove yourself.
Sure.
You have to
respect is earned, right? Respect is earned.
Yes, you got to get the playing time, then you got to get the move. Even though you're at a massive club like Arsenal, which is a step many players don't take, you're not playing. and now you're coming to the U.S. men's national team, and all of a sudden you're competing for the number one spot. You win it. How do you keep that spot and keep the guys to have that same faith in you and belief when you're not playing with your club? And most of them are saying, hey, I'm not playing if I'm not playing with my club. Why does he get the pass? So what keeps you in that spot is how you train, how you treat your fellow colleagues and teammates and your coaches, and your command, your presence. And I think what separates Matt Turner from everyone else is he is just so gifted at finding the pulse of the team and knowing who needs encouragement, who needs to be pushed. He's always willing to listen. He's a selfless guy. And where he's developed the most at Arsenal is his feet, his ability to play with his feet. And that was Greg Berhalter's main concern. Is we all know Matt Turner is one of the best shot stoppers that the U.S. has and is going on his path to ever has because of his reactions. Big wingspan, great kid, and just he needed a quality coach to help him get started. And you go from Brad Friedel to Kevin Hitchcock, that is where he really developed because he started so late in his game.
Right.
So when you have the work ethic and now you're getting world-class coaching, that's all he needed. And now he's flourishing because he's still learning because he started so late in the game. What you love about Matt Turner is in those big moments he comes up for his squad, and you as a viewer you have to say this is the guy because he's only getting better. He's hungry, and realistically, is he going to be the number one at Arsenal? No, unless Aaron Ramsdale gets hurt. Aaron Ramsdale is the most expensive keeper in the world right now, and he's arguably England's one, or he's heading that way. So is he doing everything in his power to control what he can control? Yes, because his stock is still rising, and he's not even playing with his club. So
yeah,
you hope that he gets a move, and whether that's a loan or a permanent buy because the club is like, hey, he can be our number one, and they're a top club. But either way, you know he's got the goods, even if he's not playing consistently at Arsenal. And I know we always talk about players have to be playing with their club to be playing with the national team. He's the best keeper in the pool right now. It's not even close.
Okay, so Heath, I actually want to take what Charlie said. I like this, that he's kind of got a pulse of the team. He has an idea of how to lead and picking his spots as to when to do that. And we've obviously been around multiple players that have that ability. But do you, as BJ Callahan, at this point, the team has played 4 games in the Gold Cup. You have some performances, some up and down performances from his back four. Would you go to Matt Turner, the leader, and say, hey, Matt, who do you want playing in front of you? Do you give him that type of input?
Hell no, Jimmy.
No.
Oh, you telling me you wouldn't go to him and say, hey,
no,
Jimmy,
I would use if
why
there was anything I was saying about Matt Turner to the rest of the team,
I would say,
remember when Matt Turner came into the national team and where he was, the lack of respect anybody had for him as a national team starting goalkeeper, and the developmental curve that he's had to becoming not just a shot stopper, but facing the criticism of a couple bad matches, to improving his feet, to becoming the guy that when you look at this team or you look at our A team, you go, this is a guy who's a leader. He's a guy that's going to deliver. That's who I would be pointing to as somebody who's been through tough times and continue to rise. That's how I'd be using. I certainly wouldn't be asking him his opinion on. Plus,
wait.
Are weird.
Are you suggesting that? Wait. I'm almost certain. That Bruce Arena would ask Claudio Reyna about the temperature of who he liked to play with in the middle of midfield. Like, do you not think that doesn't happen? Like, you're gonna go talk to your captain.
Yeah, but he wasn't asking.
No.
He wasn't asking Claudio Reyna when at the point that Matt Turner has become a leader, but. It's not Tim Howard.
Listen, I know
he's not 14 years starter in the national team.
No, I get that.
No,
but
he hasn't played in Champions League and Europa League and all these things.
Who do you think should start? I'm just saying, like, in terms of like getting a temperature of who's helping the game be easier for you. I don't think
you can certainly ask, like,
there's a real thin line then between, I guess, what we're saying here, between like, hey, who do you want to start in front of you, and who do you like playing with?
Yeah, but you as a coach, you can see it. You can see it for yourself. You don't even have to ask that question. He's playing in front of Miles Robinson and Jalen Neal.
I get that, but I think it's naive to think that no coaches ask their stud players like who they want to play with. I mean,
I don't think it's about. I don't think it's who he wants in front of him.
So okay, that's fine. There's distinctions.
I do think he can say, hey, from what I'm seeing from my position, from this area on the field, he's second guessing himself, or this player. Like, you can have an open conversation as a leader to a coach or a leader to a staff.
Well,
Like,
that's
those
just
are
a
normal
thinly veiled
conversations.
way of saying who do you want to start with. But okay, I mean,
I don't think so, because the coach still has to be accountable for the
of course.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I would love if BJ asked Matt, and then at that press conference afterwards, he's like, "Well, Matt told me he wanted me to start these guys."
Yeah, no,
if it didn't work out.
I think there's a line that you can't cross as a coach, because then you lose respect, because you're supposed to be making
decisions. Of course.
You don't put that on a player to say, I want X player playing versus X player, and then all of a sudden it gets out, or
right.
Or because the next thing you know, they lose the game or whatever, and Turner's like, hey, yeah, but this guy BJ, he told me to pick the team, like, or I had, you don't.
I get what you're saying.
Chance,
I just
right?
think why wouldn't you go get input from certain players? I clearly didn't phrase that initially as well as I could have, but I think you go get input from goal.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I know we're heading towards the first break of the show, but Alex has some stuff he wants to be able to show us. So I just want to roll this clip real quick before we
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm looking forward to this.
Tries and Davies on the left wing this time, because it seemed like he's more comfortable coming inside, playing on the left, than he is going down the right with this stronger right foot.
Keep those gloves up, Chuck. Keep those gloves up. Keep those gloves up.
Chuck.
Hey,
we got him on the defend yourself, Chuck.
I'll defend myself. I said Zendejas was not doing the job on the right wing, so they moved him to the left. Okay, because you had to try something. If you're giving this kid an opportunity to play, go to the left side.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do it. And my point to you when you said, well, I don't think Dewan was aggressive enough, or he wasn't going
was
forward.
Playing safe, because he had Zendejas in front of him. You're right.
Because Zendejas was giving up the ball every single time, and Zendejas is playing without confidence. So ultimately, you don't want to take those risks. And I get it, because the midfield was shut down, because Canada was doing a good job of throwing Bombito, Osorio, and Ahmed in there, just clogging it up. Mihailovic had no space. He was trying too much. Busio was giving up the ball too many times. So, and James Sands isn't a player that makes the game. So I think from that perspective, you have to play safe.
I will say to this, though, that on a night like that, right? Chuck went with DeJuan Jones. I thought DeJuan Jones personally wasn't good because of my expectations of him. Obviously, that ball, and you find a way to be impactful, that's unbelievable ball that he put in. That's next level ball. On a night that DeJuan Jones, like 9 others to me, had a bad night. And like Chuck said, well, what's DeJuan Jones supposed to do, right? And if DeJuan Jones is next to Jalen Neal, who's also struggling, he's like, well, I can't cheat forward and make the next play because I got to cover this guy next to me. And if Jalen Neal, like, you know what I mean? On these nights where it's like 7-8 guys that I think are pretty ineffective, it is really hard to pinpoint. And if you're a player on the field, we've been in those where you're like, well, I didn't do anything bad, but DeJuan Jones ended up having an unbelievable ball. But like, you also know that maybe it's an indifference performance, right? It didn't elevate you, it didn't drop you, and that's the way I saw most of these guys in that game. It was just sort of like,
that ball didn't elevate him. That ball,
no,
that he played with this.
No, of course it elevated him. Like I do that, but it's otherwise. He found a way to be impactful in the biggest of moments, right? The U.S. should have been able to see it out at that point, but obviously we know the story from there. But I was saying over 90 minutes against this Canada side, and it's a game of margins against the quality of these players between these two teams and Canada's tactics and the way they wanted to play. I thought most of the players probably looked around and were like, dude, these guys next to me are making my life hard. I'm making their lives hard. And everybody just sort of was out of that sort of rhythm that it was hard for me to grade anybody on a high level other than, Matt Turner. And I thought, Busio, and again, in the details of some of the things Busio did, I liked, but overall it was tough to give anybody real credit for that game. All right, we're gonna take our first break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the U.S. men's national team, but as it pertains to our upcoming semifinal against Panama. So do not go anywhere.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
Oh, baby, who's got the drum out? Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Heath Pearce, and we are going to stop looking back. We're going to look forward to our semifinal against Panama. Now, Panama won their group, 2 wins, 1 draw, and I think they had their best performance in the quarterfinals against Qatar. They won 4-0. It could have been 8 based on what I got to watch and see Ishmael Diaz ended up having a hat trick, the fastest hat trick in Gold Cup history. I think 3 goals in 9 minutes, but missed a couple sitters as well. He could have had 6 or 7 goals. What I think, and I want to hear obviously from Charlie and Heath about this, and Heath, I'll come to you first. But what I think about Panama and where I think they have an advantage over every team in this competition outside of us in Mexico. I guess we're in this space too, but Panama in particular has an advantage even over the U.S. and Mexico because they were part of the Nations League as well. And they got 2 games in the Nations League. And they brought the same exact roster from the Nations League to the Gold Cup. They've had a week and a half, 2 extra weeks of training with their manager, Thomas Christensen. And I think it's starting to show. They play 3 in the back. Sometimes it's a 3-4-2-1, 3-4-1-2. But that is something that we struggled with, that Canada played with the back 3 as well. And if they're as organized as Canada was, and I think they're a little bit more dynamic going forward, or at least have a little bit more of an identity, or have players that can hurt us a little bit more than Canada could. And we still gave up a couple chances to Canada. This Panama team looks very, very good. And I think that togetherness of being around each other is starting to play out. And I only say that because I thought they were very, very impressive against Qatar, where there was really only one team on the field, and it just took them a little while to hit the back of the net. Heath, does this Panama team, like, where do they scare you, and how worried should we be on a scale of 1 to 10?
Honestly, I was more worried about Canada than I'm about Panama. That's not a disrespect to Panama, just the way in which they play and we play. I think there will be chances. If you look at the first 15 minutes against Qatar, there was chances for both teams. It was pretty wide open. And it just depends on how they're going to set up and where they're going to clog. It's a game where I actually think there's more opportunity for Vasquez, and there's more opportunity for even Gressel, who I thought was ineffective. But at least you're talking about if they clog up the midfield, or it's through the center of the park, there's more options out wide. And we can go back as far as we want to, like, breaking down blocks. If a team can get disciplined in our blocks and our inability to break them down through passing and probing and things like that. And if it's going to need to come from wide areas, we need players that can cross the ball. I'll give you that. But I'm not as worried about Panama. Are really good. They showed some vulnerabilities against Qatar, obviously, in the second half. Ismail Diaz with the hat trick, I thought was phenomenal, but it wasn't like blown out in the way that the scoreline was until, again, in the second half. They showed some vulnerability. So I think the U.S., if they play the way they did against Canada, I'm worried, but I think that this team has another gear that they obviously were missing that day. So I still think the U.S. can win this one after some further reflection.
Yeah, some reflection, just sitting there thinking about their thoughts and in their feelings a little bit. Now, Chuck, when I look at Panama as well, their average age of this team is around 28, 29. And they've got a lot of guys with some experience, whereas our team is a bit of a mix, right? We got some older guys, we got some younger guys, and we're still, I think, trying to identify exactly who the best 11 is. So how about you with regard to Panama? They're going to obviously provide some challenges for us, but what are you thinking?
I'm thinking the strength of their team is in their midfield, in Carrasquilla and Godoy. I got to call both their games in the Nations League, and what stood out to me is that Carrasquilla is the player who tries to break out of the midfield and create for Panama, and Godoy kind of sits and tries to control the tempo. Those two make their team, and they only play with 2 in the midfield. So you can overrun them if you're playing with 3, because their goal is to get it wide and whip balls in. That's their strength, set pieces and crosses. That's how Panama can hurt you. And I think if the U.S. come with a proper game plan of controlling the game and not letting Carrasquilla and Godoy dictate this match, they win this game. Because this Panama team, though, is better than the Canada side. This is Panama's A team versus this Canada BC team. And the midfield is much stronger, and their attackers are stronger. I think Jose Fajardo is one of those players who just always run. He's active. He hunts the ball. They're good in the counter press.
Their number 10, Barcenas, is a baller too. If he can find the ball in pockets of space. Yeah, I mean, they've got some players. So I guess what's interesting about this particular game is you think that BJ Callahan will go to a double pivot to potentially counter what Panama provides. I hope that he doesn't, but I'm curious to see if he does. With that said, I'm very curious as to what you guys think will be the starting lineup or what you'd like to see. There's a part of me now at this point, after seeing Julian Gressel kind of get in the way of Brian Reynolds last night. They're both trying to occupy the same space to hit the ball.
Can't do it.
You can't do it. I don't want to see that. But I do think there's an interesting twist here, because when Vasquez came on and we elected to keep Ferreira on as well. We dropped him more into midfield than actually out as a winger. If we want to do that and keep Brian Reynolds, which I want to see, I would have Ferreira out on the right wing. I want to see Vasquez and I want to see Cade Cal start. These guys are our most dynamic players so far in this tournament. Get Vasquez up high, get Ferreira out wide, Cal on the other side, and then Ferreira can pinch in and create a bit of a box.
But Cal's only been good as a sub, by the way. Like he hasn't,
when
he starts and the game is tight. Same with Gressel, and even with Sands. I think about when the game is tight. These aren't playmaking types of guys. Jackson Yule's better at playing through passing as a holding midfielder. I wouldn't go with a double pivot, but I agree with you at least on the right hand side. Like if you can't adjust to the game and be staggered off of each other, and you're both just painting the white line on the right hand side, it's a pretty easy thing to play against. Yeah,
and then obviously a big question here from Deep Hauser. Will Chuck elect to start Zendejas again? Chuck?
The answer is no. the Deep Hauser. Cade Cowell has only started in the group stage against St. Kitts, right? So they were up, they won 6-0 and they scored when he was in the match. They had scored 5 goals. So I'm going to go with Cade Cowell on one wing, Ferreira on the right wing, and Vasquez up top.
I love it, Chuck. Me and you on the same page, baby. Let's go.
Because Jesus Ferreira as a midfielder, as an attacking midfielder in that trio, I think it doesn't fit. He's better to play as a right winger and come inside as opposed to being an attacking central player, because the transition I don't think he's the strongest at. And so I say you run it back with the midfield trio because you're dropping in quality if you replace one of those.
Let me ask you this, Chuck. Let me ask you this with that midfield three then.
Yeah.
Does it not make more sense to – I mean, look, I'd love for us to go and dictate the game from start to finish in this one. But with Ferreira on the wing, you're talking about a guy – Ferreira does not like to track back. He doesn't want to play defense. He doesn't want to come all the way back next to Reynolds and make that play.
Nor do we want to waste his energy doing that if we can be more
I fully agree. But if you play with the single 6 and 2 8s, you're not having all that coverage all the time. If Reynolds is going to go and Ferreira is up high as well, and you're exposing those moments, a single
No. Reynolds doesn't go. Reynolds doesn't need to go. You have Jesus Ferreira playing as your right winger. Reynolds.
But you got to create the overloads. I guess what I'm saying, you got to create some overloads sometimes.
It's all about timing. It's not you just go.
Yeah,
when the moment's there and Jesus Ferreira comes inside, the overlap's there, go ahead. But I think what we learned in this game is Brian Reynolds isn't the smoothest in the attack. So I think like DeJuan Jones, patience. Let the plays develop. You don't have to get forward every time the U.S. has the ball. And that's what I think DeJuan Jones has worked at continuously, because he was guilty of, I'm just bombing forward because I have that pace and no one's going to catch me. I preach, if I'm BJ, patience. Let's have structure. Let's not get out of place. We can win this game just by controlling the midfield. When you control the midfield and you don't allow Panama to break out in these counters or break out in transition, you've won the game because you're going to neutralize them. That's when they're dangerous, is when the game gets open, Eric Davis gets in, whips in a ball, or they get that corner kick. Other than that, I'm good with that trio.
Jimmy, can I, you know how many times a coach came up to my locker right before a game and said, hey, Heath, pick and choose your moments, like keep that balance. And I'm like, yeah, for sure, coach. And then that first kickoff happens, overlap, get up into the attack. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, coach, I got you. Overlap. I'm going. My 6 will cover me.
So I actually think what's interesting is that, and I assume we would all agree, that we've had a trouble kind of building out of the back. And I think that, and where I got a little bit frustrated, Chuck, you weren't part of the podcast last night, where we had 6 days to prepare for this Canada game, and it looked like we had one day. We just didn't look. We looked really disjointed, and you'd think we would have eliminated some of that disjointedness. Now I know some of it's Canada and their tactics, but we still didn't solve those problems. With regard to this, I think we're going to see something similar. I think that Thomas Christensen, the manager of Panama, is going to take notes from what Canada did and did well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. With Ferreira coming in, I think you can create a bit of a box, because what you can do is if Sands drops in, I'm going to have the same starting midfield, by the way, of Sands, Busio, and Mihailovic. But you could create a box in midfield where Ferreira comes in and you almost have double 10s with Mihailovic and Ferreira finding those pockets of space. And then Busio can drop down a little bit, and then you have a back 3. So then Reynolds can go wide, or if it's going the other side, DeJuan Jones can go wide. and you've now started to create. You get to spread out Panama in some ways, and now you've created two. You can kind of go into a double pivot to build out, but ultimately, as the game starts to develop, then you can move back into having a double 8, and then Ferreira can kind of pick his spots going forward. But I think that could help unlock a few things, because that would create that overload. We would then create a 4v3 in the middle of midfield, and I know that you say it's really just Godoy and
Carrasquilla. That's
yeah,
it.
the
It
kid
literally
from
is.
Dynamo.
It's just those two in the midfield.
But again, if when you have, and I know I'm a fan, I can see what Ferreira's trying to do a lot, right? I think he's got a high IQ for the game, and Mihailovic does as well. So if you give them a little bit of freedom to like try to find those ways to create that, but not the real delicate thing for me as a coach is I wouldn't want them to don't drop too deep, right? It's trying to find that sweet spot of not dropping too deep, because that'll allow Panama to just keep the game in front of us. So we still got to break the lines with some of our passing, but I think if we went into a back three when we build out and allow Reynolds to get a little higher, DeJuan Jones, I think that could solve a few of our issues, and then it would force Panama to have to adjust in a way that maybe they haven't faced an opponent like us so far.
Jimmy, who do you start at center back? Does Jalen Neal start again?
Yeah, I start Jalen Neal again. He falls into the Cade Cal kind of ideal for me that, hey, this is a young guy. He's going to be somewhat inconsistent. I still want to roll with him. I know what Miazga and Long can do, and I don't need to see those guys anymore. I want to see Jalen Neal work through adversity and have Matt Turner behind him and have Miles Robinson. I want to see Miles work through that as well. And actually, I would demand a lot of Miles to have more of a presence from a leadership standpoint, to really make sure that he's the guy. And I thought he didn't showcase that last night, and I would ask more of him for that. And I'd still stay with DeJuan Jones and Brian Reynolds. I think that's our back four moving forward that I want to see. I don't know what you guys think for midfield.
You keeping that for if this happens, and we talked about this yesterday a little bit, Jimmy, you keeping the same back line for the final?
Yeah, I would. If we got to the final and got through Panama,
you can't change it at that point.
Change it.
That's what I'm saying. But that temptation rolls in of being like, yeah, but we gave you 5 games. You need a 6, Jalen? Like, we're gonna go with
no. Yeah,
somebody is,
of course.
We're gonna go with a veteran, though, because that's the easy default, right? In those types of ones. But I agree. I think Jalen Neal. The problem with Jalen Neal is he's got really good moments and he's got really bad moments, and he's a young player, and that's what happens, right? Is like when he gets exposed, he gets really exposed, and things happen. But for a player with his talent and his upside, this is invaluable. I don't think you do that at the cost of winning a game, but I think he's shown in other ways, duels and scraps, when he doesn't get pulled. When he gets pulled out to the wings, he's done, right? He gets blown apart. But otherwise, I think that you keep him. I'm going with the same back line, same midfield as well. And you guys have me on Ferreira out on the wing, because I think when he was in the center,
yes. When
he was in the center, but I might actually go Roldan on one side and Ferreira on the other. And Cal coming in. But I will say that when Ferreira was in the middle, he was trying to be a midfielder too much, and at times was coming really deep to get the ball, which I like. I like him to get his touches, but that leaves a gigantic gap. And the more that I can keep Ferreira as a true withdrawn, striker and connected to a striker up top, like I'm all for it. Thanks,
You're
guys.
such an MLS shill.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You guys won me over.
Cal plays in MLS too.
Yeah. What do you guys want me to do? Cancel the tournament? Come on. That's what fans on Twitter are like. Cancel the tournament. Like
which is funny, because I think the only way Jalen Neal in particular, Cade Cal in particular, get better is if they get repetitions in game-like situations against opponents that they don't see very often. Like, how else are we going to evaluate those guys? How else are they going to get better if they're not seeing those types of things in high pressure? So it's kind of funny. Like, this is an insane opportunity to get some of our players to see our player pool and how they respond. And for the ones that sink or swim, right? If they can handle it and can manage it, cool. They can continue to stay in the player pool. And if they can't, thanks for coming out and playing.
Having said that, we're about 5 minutes from getting the boot in the quarterfinal of the Gold Cup. So, I mean, again, it doesn't matter. We all know we've been in tight, hairy moments like that. You get out of them and you realize, that's why my thing says learning and winning is greater than learning and losing, guys. Chuck can't see it. Chuck can't see it because he's on his iPhone 4S.
Chuck's trying to read the comments right now.
How is Chuck getting into the comments on a phone?
I don't know, but he's figured it out.
All I know, yes, I did figure it out. I had to get in the comments. So this
the man of the people.
Soccer USA. If Jesus plays winger, where does that put him on the national team depth chart?
Well, Chuck, you're a resident number 9.
Like
so you go ahead. You go first.
Well, Balogun's still 1. Pepe's still 2. And now you have Jesus Ferreira as 3. but Josh Sargent is right there, because I still feel that Josh Sargent in that performance in the World Cup against Iran, unfortunately he got injured, but that was the best I've seen him in a U.S. men's national team jersey. Now, he was lacking the goal part, but he where he improved tremendously is the impact part, making runs, doing the dirty work, the hold up play, finding the good spots. So that's still a player who I think has a lot to gain this season, especially with Teemu Pukki going to Minnesota. He'll be the striker. He's got to deliver in the championship, try and get promoted or try and get a move with his performances this season. So he's still in the conversation. And then Jesus Ferreira is flirting with him right now. And then Brandon Vasquez is still, his stock is rising.
Yeah, I mean, Vasquez, I think, gives us a different type of player profile than maybe some of the other guys. And I think that helps him.
Scoring penalties.
Well, his penalty, I don't think has come down yet. I think it's still on the rise. So fair play to him on that.
Chuck, it's going to hit Chuck on his boat soon. You know what I mean? It's still flying. He's going to find it out in the water. So Chuck's going to find a floating ball out next to his yacht.
So Heath, do you feel like, and I feel like this, that because Jesus could drop in as a 10, or if he does well in a somewhat winger position, a hybrid winger position, an almost second striker hybrid winger, that obviously creates value for him to I guess go higher up the national team player pool depth chart because he can play multiple positions. I think that's a benefit. But if you are like number 3 or number 4 in each of those positions, I don't know how excited he'd be about that as opposed to being like as close to number 1 as possible.
Jimmy.
What's that?
It can't be a benefit just because the wingers are. That's like
I know. I get it.
I get
it. I'm just trying to create like some value for the guy.
I do think
he's got quality, dude. He's got quality.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you this. I do think that had I played right back a season longer or had played more center back in my career, and I'm talking about 2010, I think there is some, when you get to the bottom of a roster, a player that you can throw into a number of spots. But if you're 3 or 4 on those, I think that makes it even harder, right? If you're 2 in one and maybe 3 in the other in a bind, like if you're a left midfielder that can drop to left back and you have some of those types of tools in a bind, I think that helps. But if you're not, ultimately Jesus Ferreira is going to be judged on his ability to score goals, right? And so can he move into some other spots and have some versatility that will help his game grow? Yeah, but him specifically, I don't see it helping necessarily.
And does he have the vibes? The vibes are very important under Greg, as we know. The vibes.
I think as an attacker, you have to be pretty position specific in terms of what you bring to the table. Are you a striker or are you a winger that can play on both sides? But in terms of being a winger or a striker and then being able to play midfield or right back or left back, Timothy Weah is probably the only player that can do that. Other than that, I think you got to be as good as you possibly can in one spot just because of the crazy depth in this pool.
All right, we're going to take our second to last break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we're going to talk some transfer news for some of the players in our player pool. So don't go anywhere.
And how about this? Get ready for non-stop action that will have you say, "You gotta be kidding!" Oh my, Canada! This could change things. What a play and what a finish! That's a pretty good football, eh? He's gone all the way to the house. It's the Canadian Football League, Thursday on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy alongside Heath and Chuck, and we have some transfer news to get into for our U.S. men's national team player pool. And we're going to start with Brendan Aaronson, who completes a season-long loan move to Union Berlin in the Bundesliga.
Hey, you see that Paramount Plus on the shirt? You see that Paramount Plus right under the crest?
Nice.
Sick.
Dude.
Way, dude.
Vibing.
Getting after it. You love to see it. So I love this quote from Brendan Aaronson. He said, a year ago, I wouldn't have believed that I'm here and can play in the Champions League with Union. I look forward to the year ahead with joy and confidence, and I want to help ensure that we have another successful season. There's a lot of wheeze going on there. And the Leeds fans have jumped on this quote and are hating on Brendan Aaronson because
obviously.
A year ago he was with them and he was excited to play in the Premier League, and now they got relegated and he's jumping ship to not help them get back up. And now saying things like, "Oh, I couldn't have believed that I'd be playing in the Champions League with a Bundesliga club," and almost just rewriting history about what just happened in this past year. But let's leave that aside. I understand where the Leeds fans' bitterness is coming from, because I would be upset about that too. And you want to see the players that,
the rug.
it had to, if you want to see the players have some accountability for the failure, right? You want to see them fight through it and have success and get them back up to where they believe they belong. And obviously having Leeds in the Premier League always just feels better. But Brendan's jumping ship, going to the Bundesliga, playing in the Champions League. I think from a individual player perspective, it's pretty awesome for Brendan. But I wonder how he's going to be utilized. I'm a big fan of their manager, Urs Fischer. I think obviously getting a club of that size into the Champions League is a huge accomplishment. But we've seen, even we use Eintracht Frankfurt of recent years, it's hard to balance the European success with trying to obviously maintain consistency in your league form as well. Eintracht have struggled with that over a couple of years, even though they've had success in the Europa League and so on. This is what are we feeling about this particular move? Charlie, I'll come to you first.
Well, he can always ask his brother how to deal with the Europe and Bundesliga balance.
That's true.
That's true. Paxton, the younger brother, who I think is going to get some playing time this year. So it'll be interesting to see how the Aaronson is doing the Bundesliga. But in this 3-5-2 system that Union Berlin play in, I think it's going to really help Brent Aaronson. There's going to be more space for him to play, where he's going to improve anyways, is playing in tight spaces in midfield, being knocked around physically. How does he cope with that? How does he impact the game if there is no space to run into? Touches on the ball. Can he play those 1-2s and generate opportunities for his teammates? We know he's unselfish, and he's got quality, and counter-pressing is arguably he's one of the best midfielders the U.S. have in terms of pressing. But that's one style of play, and that's the Gegenpress and the RB Leipzig philosophy, the Red Bull philosophy. I want that out the window. Because that style is getting old. Sure, you can take some concepts from it, but you have to evolve from that. In terms of getting on the ball and dictating the tempo, switching the point of attack, running at players 1v1, playing 1-2s, that's where Brendan Aaronson can improve. And I think in this system and with this team, finding Pfunk, playing 1-2s off of Pfunk and Geraldo Becker, I'm hyped to see what Brendan Aaronson can do in the Bundesliga with this team. It's a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, Heath, I mean, there's something to be said with regard to the amount of success that he's had, kind of playing the one style that Charlie's talking about. Can he find that next layer, to add that nuance to his game where he, as obviously we want this, and you want this for every player if you're developing anybody, but to be unstoppable, right? Okay, if they take away your plan A, you've got a plan B that can also give you success in different ways. How does he develop that here when it's tough though as a player, like, I've been so good at this. This is what's got me the success, to get away from that. But we know that he's got to add that nuance. So what do you say?
But when I go back to the type of person he is, character type, right? I'm not talking about like, cares about the team. I'm talking about the fact that he is an actual student of the game, right? He's going to go there. He wants to learn. He wants to be, he thrived in a very structured tactical environment previously. Nothing about Leeds was tactical and whatever. It was survival from the very beginning and just chaos, right? Week in and week out. He struggled there. Confidence fell apart. I think this is a new opportunity for him to be in an environment, especially in Germany, where it's very much about tactics. It's about the team mentality. It's about finding a way to contribute. It's about being put into your box, your parameters, and then thriving within those parameters. I think those are all things that, again, you go back to Ernst Tanner, who's very, very German, and the style of which, helped Brendan Aaronson along the way. I think about that as a really good opportunity for him. He's going to have to still go out and prove himself and make the most when he gets goal scoring opportunities, when he gets an opportunity to put in a final ball, those types of details that he'll ultimately be judged upon. But I think in terms of him building his confidence, it's the right type of environment for him at his age and the type of person that he is. I like the idea. Still got to prove it though.
Okay, so we're 44 minutes into the show. I'm going to have my first flex of the day. And I had an opportunity to play against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu in 2005. And it was a friendly. Listen, Chuck, relax.
Hey, no one cares, Jimmy. Hey, no one cares, Jimmy.
You should.
No one cares.
Because listen, it matters to what I'm going to say. This context is important. But
Jimmy
what I learned in that
biceps just bust through his sweatshirt right now. You know what I mean?
Listen. What I learned in those 90 minutes and what I took back from that was that those guys, Zidane, Ronaldo, Raul, Beckham, Roberto Carlos, look, they were so efficient in their movements. They didn't waste energy. They didn't make runs just to make runs. And I think Brendan Aaronson wastes a lot of energy when he plays. And I think that is what I want to see from him grow as a player, is
Good
picking
shout.
his spots and to when to be an absolute maniac and chase things down, and when to be like, hey, that's not now. That moment isn't now. I would only be going by myself. It wouldn't be tethered with the rest of my team to try to close this down. And so or to try to take 5 guys on at once or whatever it may be. So that is what I want to see him get better at and to evolve and mature. Does he show it at times? Of course he does. But I want to see that more consistently from him. So that would be the one thing. Now, Heath, I know you got to go, so I'm going to throw it to you as our resident left back. Let's talk Jedi Robinson.
Where has he got to go?
He's got to leave in a few minutes.
Well, Chuck, I can't control your internet connections. All right, I'll stay 7 more. I'll stay 7 more, Jimmy. I'll stay 7 more minutes, so you don't have to come to me too. 7
okay,
more.
well. Anyway, you're the resident left back, and Jedi Robinson signed a 5-year extension with Fulham. Now, he had been thrown out there as potentially going to Manchester City amongst other clubs. Do you like him staying at Fulham? He come out and said to the fans who have stuck by me, which I think is an interesting part of the first sentence, to the fans who stuck by me, supported me ever since I've been at this club. It's been one hell of a ride. Some ups, some downs, especially off the back of last season. I just want to thank you for your massive support. I'm going to repay that support with a lot of hard work to improve myself and continue to grow as a team. It's hard not to read in between the lines there, but there's a couple insinuations that like maybe they thought he just wanted to leave and go to Man City and now he's got to win back the fans a little bit. I don't know, but
no, I was talking to Steve Cherundolo the other day, and he said because they moved that Mahalo Poku to Montreal, and he said ultimately a player value is dictated only by offers. Right? We can sit and talk about 40 million, he's 50, he's 60, but if that offer isn't there and the opportunity doesn't come, I think he's in a great situation right now. He's 25 years old. He's still got some upside to be able to then have a peak or top of his career move to somewhere else if that's what he wants on a personal level. But he's in a great spot there, and he's considered one of their key contributors, and also knows that he's a player that had some really good games and some average games and a few bad games, right? But he's relied upon and trusted, and that's tough to find in any club, especially as a left back. As we know, everybody's looking for their next left back. Everybody's looking for somebody to replace them because no one's ever satisfied with their left fullback or even the right fullbacks at time. And so I think, one, the market probably dictated the opportunities, but two, he's in a really great place, probably personally, professionally. And so why not sign a new deal? And if the right offer comes into the future, then you'll get that, and maybe part of that new deal was them trying to raise the ceiling of what somebody would have to offer for him to get out. So he gets peace of mind of saying, probably not going to leave for a while because I'm too expensive. And yeah, overall, I think we sort of undervalue sometimes a re-signing of a player at a club of that value because of the hype that's being connected to with a Man City or otherwise. That I think it's a good one for him.
Yeah, what's interesting, Chuck, is the trust part that Heath brought up, because he clearly is trusted by Marco Silva, who I really regard as a manager. I like him. I think he's got a plan of how he wants Fulham to continue to grow, and I thought they were super competitive last year when not many people expected it. So I'm okay with that. I think he'll continue to grow as a player at Fulham. But and if you go to City, obviously being coached by Pep Guardiola would have been next level, but you still would have to have earned his trust. And as we've seen, even with Joao Cancelo, that trust is can be thrown away very quickly with Pep Guardiola. And obviously there's a bigger story there that we can get into later, or you guys can discuss it on Morning Footy. But with regard to Jedi, are you happy with this, or do you feel like he's settled in some ways when there might have been opportunities to go to a bigger club?
You got to think what's best for him, what's best for his family. He's in the English Premier League. At the end of the day, he's going to be your starting left back for a Premier League team. You're okay. And if Manchester City really want him, or AC Milan, or any of these big clubs that have come in for him in the past, then they're going to pay for him. So any player in that situation, or most players in that situation, are going to re-up, make more money, have that guarantee, which is 5 years. And then maybe you have a sell on a buyout clause. Maybe there's a right. number that benefits both the club and you, and you settled on that, and you're happy, because if a club is paying X amount for you, that means you're coming in as a number one. There's no question that, if you went to Manchester City, you don't know if you're playing. Look at what Jack Grealish had to go through, or Riyad Mahrez. Riyad Mahrez was one of the players of the season when Leicester won the Premier League. And
look at Zinchenko. Zinchenko's a good example of just leaving because he knew he was going to get his games at Arsenal.
So there's part of you that's pushing to become the best version of yourself, and that means playing for arguably the best coach, where you're competing every single day. And you may not start from week to week. Maybe you start once a month, once every 3 months, whatever it is, versus I know I'm playing every week and I'm playing in the best league in the world. I'm happy. My family's happy. I'm in London. I'm not moving. There's no reason for me to move. And consistency is everything. And your health and your happiness kind of come in front of like ambition at this point, just because he's already playing a World Cup. He's continuing to thrive under a new manager at Fulham. I like this. I like this a lot, because if a big club's going to come from him, they're going to come from him regardless.
Right. All right, there's some last news then from one of our players, Timo Weah, who is going to play in Serie A with Juventus. Another reason to get Paramount Plus, everybody moving forward. Not only is Christian Pulisic going to Milan, but we got Timo Weah going to Juventus. So that's exciting. And obviously Weston McKennie's future. Maybe he'll stay in Italy. We'll see. Or if he stays with Juve, we'll end up seeing what happens there. I know Roma had some interest too. But unfortunately for Timo Weah, no European football, because Juve have agreed to UEFA's sanctions, and they are going to drop out of the Europa Conference League, which is probably a competition they thought was beneath them anyway. But I don't know. In some ways, yes, it would have been cool to see Timo Weah participate in a European competition. But now they really just have to focus on the league and Coppa Italia. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. And with Juan Cuadrado on his way out, I think it's really slated, especially under Maxi Allegri, for Timo Weah to kind of be that right wing back, playing that Cuadrado role and doing it to great effect. And I actually, want to give a shout out to Lille for and the managers there for putting Timo Weah on that spot. And I think it's made him a lot more dynamic from a deeper position. I think he can attack the space in different ways. And it seems like he's willing to defend, which is kind of cool, and not everybody that signs up for those roles always likes to defend, but it seems like Timo's willing to do that work. And I think he'll excel under Allegri. So I'm very excited to see how he does. Outside resident back for us, outside back. Heath, thoughts on Timo Weah before we let you go?
This is a one where I think versatility matters for Weah, right? And he's obviously high up the chart as the right winger for the men's national team, but he could play in a wing back system that keeps him on the field. He can even cover as a left wing back, knowing that that's a higher positional starting point. So that's one that I think when you talk about a depth of a squad and a club team, that's an environment where, similar to where I thought Weston McKennie was when he first got to Juventus, was can he play in enough positions in the midfield to be able to be on the field, right? Could he be a little more attacking? Could he be a little more defensive? In that first year at Juventus, he proved that, to where as players fell out or form fell out, he continued to be moved around. And I think Weah has that capability and that willingness and mentality to keep himself part of a conversation. Even if a player ahead of him is in better form, he'll likely still be somewhere on the field to contribute to this team. But it would have been nice to see him in the Conference League, because, those things do matter.
Okay, Chuck, thoughts on Timo Weah?
I wouldn't be watching, by the way, but those things do matter.
It's a massive club. It's a great opportunity for him. Another step in the right direction. I think the fact that they're not playing in Champions League, less games, less wear and tear, it's probably beneficial for him just to focus on Serie A week in and week out, the preparation, getting used to it. Obviously, Weston McKennie, he probably picked up a lot of information on what to expect from Allegri and their style of play. So I'm confident that he will continue to thrive. And it's given him the edge. When you see him play, he plays with a maturity and almost an understanding that I'll do more than anyone I'm playing against. I know how to defend. I can take it from anybody, but I have the goods to attack. And in Nations League, he was phenomenal. Both games.
I'm excited to see how Timo Weah plays and how he fits into Juve's scheme. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to the squad, and I love that sign. And they got him for a great price too. So I think there's a tremendous amount of upside there. All right, I'm going to call it a show, but I want to do final thoughts here. 24 years ago today, July 10th, 1999, the U.S. women's national team beat China in penalties at the Rose Bowl to win the 1999 World Cup. And that was a real watershed moment for women's sports. And Brandi Chastain had that famous celebration where she ripped off her shirt after scoring the winning penalty and had her sports bra on. And just a really powerful moment for that team and for the positive ripple effects that it's had on that team moving forward. I got to see them play yesterday in their 2-0 win over Wales as they prepare for the World Cup down in Australia, New Zealand. I'm excited to see how they're going to perform as they start to transition from their last two winning World Cup teams into something of a new mode that's a little bit Alyssa Thompson, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith focused. So it's going to be really exciting to see how they play and perform. But I wanted to give a shout out to that because that team was the 1999 team was so important to really planting the seed for what was possible for women's sports. And I don't know if we, even though they are celebrated, I don't know if we celebrate them enough. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. I don't know if you guys want to add to those final thoughts, but definitely excited for this Women's World Cup this summer.
What I'll add to it is somebody is messing with the SEO, Jimmy, and that for the last few days, if you search on Google USMNT results, USMNT anything, the women's national team comes straight up. The result against Wales. So I love that. We're shifting everything to the Women's World Cup, deservedly so. But I dare you to go on your search engine right now and search USM men's national team results, and all the women's stuff comes up, which is pretty rad. Someone's hijacking it, and I love it.
Chuck, how about you?
I guess I'd finish out with Megan Rapinoe announcing her retirement, and
love her.
What an icon for in our sport, and what she's been able to do for the women's game, and just I think overall just having the courage to stand up for what is right. So huge props to her in her career. Hopefully she goes out with a trophy, a World Cup trophy. But it's been a long ride. It's been an honor. I got to meet her at the McDonald's All-American game in high school, and she's just a baller.
I went to college with her, so whatever, guys.
All right, so Heath won, the rest of us 0, but I absolutely adore Megan Rapinoe, and I'm very curious to see what she does next because I think she'll be a hell of a pundit and be a lot of fun to watch no matter what she decides to do. All right, that's the show. On behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Heath, Chuck, and myself, Conradino, thank you for listening and watching In Soccer We Trust, and we will see you Wednesday after the semifinal, the U.S. taking on Panama. So make sure you tune in and hit like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and we'll see you then. Later.